would start with something that they were familiar with. So I'd say, omega-3, right? And everyone says, yes, of course, doc, because they've done such a great job of marketing and explaining what omega-3 is. And it's like, well, it's a special type of fat called polyunsaturated fat. Everyone's heard of saturated fat, right? Everyone can say that and point to butter. Everyone's heard of monounsaturated fat. They go, oh, isn't that in olive oil, right? So I did residency in Eastern Kentucky, right? So, your average patient out in Eastern Kentucky was familiar with this, like deep, Appalachian folks, right? And so I'd go, well, omega-3 is called a polyunsaturated fat. Poly because it has multiple, spots on the chain where things can happen. They go, all right, it makes sense. And I go, well, there's a sister to that. There's a brother to that called omega-6, right? My patient already understands that omega-3 is so low in their diet. The TV or the internet or a doctor at some point said, you should take some more of it. You need to take this fish oil pill, right? They know it's being sold to them. In general, their understanding is good thing, right? Okay, so I'm not getting enough of a good thing. I should take more of that. And I go, okay, very easy. Here's the narrative. This is the way you would explain it to people for omega-6. It's the opposite problem. You're swimming in it, right? It's in everything, and what that's doing is it's skewing your ratio. And now a lot of people were memed to the concept of omega-6 to 3 ratio a long time ago. A lot of books have been written on this. I think the problem is human nature. When someone tells you that you're imbalanced, is they're going to want to add something to this. They're going to want to take more 3. That's human nature, right? You're going to find out of an imbalance, and then someone's going to want to sell you something in order to fix that, right? The real problem is you need to bring down that omega-6. So where is it, and what do I have to do? It's in, and I'm going to, I'm the seed oil disrespecter, but even I'm going to, miss a couple, but, corn oil, safflower oil, canola oil, soybean oil, cottonseed oil, right? This long list of things, right? That's the obvious thing. And that's every single restaurant. Oh, there's very peculiar ones that just either it's an expensive place that is very specifically telling you we're not using margarine, right? But even expensive places, they don't care. They'll fry things, they'll make tempura, it's in everything, right? Mayonnaise is soybean oil, right? The garlic sauce at Papa John's is soybean oil. Your favorite peanut butter has got vegetable oil in it, right? Everything. And then people go, well, of course, you're talking about all the processed foods. Well, of course, processed foods are bad for you. And I'm like, well, this is why they're majority bad for you, right? And I'm not denying that there's like 1,001 things out there that are hurting you. But my main argument is that I want to make it known that the omega-6 problem and the seed oil problem is one of the majors. This phrase, don't major in the minors, right? Like if you're just worried about small little, you got like 15 things you're worried about every single day, but you're also, drinking 6 beers a night or something, right? Or you're sleeping 4 hours, right? It's like, okay, if what was the phrase years ago? If Bill Gates stopped to pick up $1, this is how much money he'd lose, those type of things. So it's, just like sleeping, getting sunshine, eating enough protein, I think that having a low polyunsaturated fat and roughly equal 1-to-1, 4-to-1, a low omega-6 diet, a low polyunsaturated fat diet, and getting omega-3s from fish and grass-fed beef and things like that is good. I think that's one of the majors. That's one of the big points I'd like to make, because what you need to be doing is eating a low omega-6 diet. Where it is all the vegetable oils, right, and the seed oils, or vegetables being seed oils. It's a misnomer, vegetables. It sounds like you making a smoothie or something, but no, you're extracting things out of seeds, even if it's expeller pressed. I don't care. It's all the same thing. And then, of course, the what I talked about earlier, the meat choices, beef, ruminants, multi-chambered stomach, microbes. Even if you feed them corn and soy or whatnot, the microbes will change a lot of that polyunsaturated fat to better saturated fats. That's why I eat more beef and I eat less chicken and pork. That's the why you need to do it. That's what you need to do. On the damage end, if you look, so here's something interesting. By weight, and I learned this from Tucker Goodrich, who I co-host a podcast with. We talk about where the rubber hits the road on a lot of these diseases and why you want to avoid omega-6. If you look at prescription drugs, right? Everything from what your doctor gives you to what you buy at CVS or Walgreens or Walmart or something. By weight, most of those work on a pathway of omega-6, right? Because omega-6 gets oxidized, broken apart, becomes other compounds, right? Like a Pokemon, right? You got your one thing, it's going to become other things and become more powerful and more consequential. So a lot of folks out there that are saying that there's no problem with omega-6 is because they might be looking at a more benign and more tightly controlled pathway. Fair enough, right? Like the pathway that ibuprofen, like NSAIDs work on, very tightly controlled, right? So even if you have a high omega-6 diet, you're not just going to keel over and die. But some of the other pathways of oxidative stress, looking at, for instance, one of the most popular ones, which people should read about. This is one, I'm trying not to teach people too many new words. If I go in and talk to a patient, I'm not going to go in there and use 10 new words they've never heard, right? It's ridiculous, right? It's too much for people. But you should know about 4-HNE, 4-hydroxynonenal. Just because if you read anything about oxidative stress, which I think there's over, like, if you look up PubMed, like 300,000 papers or something, the gold standard for measuring oxidative stress is 4-HNE. By definition, that comes from omega-6. By definition, the highest proportion of omega-6 that we get in our diet is vegetable oils, seed oils, and of course, chicken and pork, like I mentioned. We are drastically skewing towards this omega-6. All of that excess omega-6 is more likely to become things like 4-HNE, which causes oxidative stress, or just certain situations your body could be in could cause oxidative stress, like normal things that you have to do in life, right? If you look at almost every chronic metabolic disease, these oxidative products are where the rubber is hitting the road, right? Everything that happens in your engine, everything that happens in your car, and the weight and the wind and the weather, what's making your car go forward? It's like right there where the rubber is hitting the road. That's why we use the phrase. So right there on the edge between thing and disease, lipid peroxidation, 4-HNE, oxidative stress, over and over and over and over and over again, which means there's plenty of things that are going to change that, change risk factors, change propensity, change genetic factors, all these things. But when you look at oxidized LDL, that's causing atherosclerosis, it's oxidized omega-6. When you look at damage to membrane channels where things are going in between cells, right? Lipid peroxidation. When you look at damage to proteins and organelles that lead to more products that lead to Alzheimer's, lipid peroxidation. When you look at sunburn and antioxidants and depleting antioxidants, lipid peroxidation. When you look at cirrhosis in experimental models, they can't, I think it's mice or rats or whatever in this particular study, they can't even give the animal cirrhosis with alcohol unless they had the omega-6 to push it over edge to cause the fibrosis and cause the damage. The omega-6 is flammable. So there's a lot of folks out there that'll say there's no problem with omega-6 because if you look at these studies, if you have higher omega-6, you actually have better outcomes. That is not a qualitative understanding of the problem. Everyone's different in terms of their susceptibility to oxidation, right? They say, Alzheimer's is type 3 diabetes, right? There's plenty of folks with a perfectly normal A1C with these diseases. There's correlation with obesity. Sick people tend to have other diseases, multiple diseases, but these exist they're siloed in all different folks because people have different genetic susceptibilities or genetic defense against these things. Most people are eating pretty similar diets, right? You pick a city or pick a state, or it's not incredibly drastic how different most people are eating. You can have people with diabetes with chronic kidney disease or chronic kidney disease without diabetes, or it's because of your genes and your environment and how well you protect against these things. So, I'm going on with this great tangent. So my point is you should pay attention to this because there is more research out there existing that is relevant to this topic than you could ever read. But it's such a qualitative leap to help people understand this, and it directly goes against so much economic interest that it is pushing a boulder uphill just to have people understand this. It's tremendous because if people are going to say, well, high omega-6 here is better. We have better outcomes in certain whatever. There'll be studies without controls, and they're not looking at the actual problem, which is when omega-6 gets oxidated. Just as one example, COVID, ARDS, acute respiratory distress syndrome. That's when you have all that inflammation in your lungs. Your oxygen requirement goes up. It's one of the primary ways that COVID was fatal. That is an omega-6 pathway. So as folks were metabolizing a lot of these things, and that's that. And we go into these things on our podcast. So Tucker Goodrich, being the gentleman, he's a engineer brain. He can do all the stuff off the top of your head. I'm a physician, so if I really need to explain something, I need a PowerPoint. Okay, on page 12 of this thing that I developed right here, some folks just off the top of their head. I'm not one of those guys. I'm the mean guy. I'm the one who looks at everything and say, how can I simplify this for my patient? I use the same skills to make jokes on the internet? How can I simplify for this for you? But also what you're trying to do as a physician is look at 1,001 facts and say, why is this important? What are we going to do about this? It's an executive role, right? So what we try to do on this podcast is it's like a study club. We'll go over PDFs of studies and help people understand these things. And it's a total uphill battle. But there's so many topics that we could just keep going, and that's what we plan.
Is it just cheaper and that's why companies have been doing it? Or is there some greater agenda that they've been forcing us down our throats for some reason for decades? Like what have you come up with as to why they're doing this?
If you want the answer to that question right there and you like that spicy clip, check it out here. Come on, we'll see you in there. But if you want the full interview in its entirety, all the spicy clips put together, and you're not going to want to miss it, believe me, then check that out here. Come on, we'll see you in there. Do it.